Blood dripped onto parched earth as Kevin Dawson's raw fingers clawed at his mother's grave. Moonlight silvered the Arizona desert, casting the 6-year-old's shadow across the freshly turned soil like a dark accusation. His torn fingernails left crimson streaks in the dirt as he dug with desperate determination. "You're not down there," he whispered, voice breaking. "You're screaming somewhere else. I can hear you." 3 nights now, he'd escaped the orphanage to dig at this grave, marked by a crude wooden cross, Clare Dawson, 1854-1880. 3 nights of tearing at the earth until his hands bled and tears cut clean tracks through the dust on his face. His small body trembled with exhaustion, but he wouldn't stop. Couldn't stop. From behind a twisted mesquite 50 yards away, Hercules watched. The observer made no sound, his breathing imperceptible, his stillness perfect. The Apache warrior's scarred face remained expressionless, but his hand tightened around the medicine pouch at his waist when the boy's broken sobs carried on the night wind. Inside that pouch, ashes of his own family massacred by white settlers 3 winters past. His son would have been this boy's age now, when the child collapsed against the grave, pressing his ear to the earth as if listening for something below. The warrior's eyes narrowed. The boy's conviction stirred something long dormant in the Apache's chest. Not compassion, he'd buried that with his wife and son. Something else, something primal, the whisper of spirits that shouldn't be ignored. The boy suddenly tensed, head snapping up at a sound only he perceived. "I hear you," he breathed, digging with renewed frenzy. "I'm coming, Mother." The warrior melted deeper into shadow as the boy finally surrendered to exhaustion, curling beside the disturbed grave in fitful sleep. Only then did he approach silently, studying the small figure whose determination defied his years. The warrior had seen enough death to recognize when something wasn't right. And something about this grave, this boy, this supposed death reeked of wrongness. Kneeling beside the sleeping child, he noticed the crude drawing clutched in the boy's dirt-encrusted fingers, a woman with a distinctive crescent-shaped scar on her left wrist. As the warrior carefully extracted the paper for closer inspection, the boy's eyes snapped open, locking onto the unfamiliar face looming above him. Instead of screaming, Kevin Dawson asked with eerie calm, "Did they bury your family wrong too?" The question struck like an arrow, precise and penetrating. The warrior returned the drawing without reply, but something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared purpose that transcended words. With a slight nod, the Apache disappeared into the darkness, leaving the boy staring after him with the first flicker of hope in his hollow eyes. Rose Hill simmered under the merciless Arizona sun, its whitewashed buildings radiating heat that distorted the air above dusty streets. To traders and travelers, the town represented salvation from the desert's killing embrace. To Kevin Dawson, it had become a prison where truth died a little more each day. "Get up, you lazy child." Mrs. Peterson's hickory switch cracked against the orphanage dormitory door. Chores don't wait for dreamers and gravediggers. Kevin's fingers instinctively covered the fresh welts on his forearms, punishment for last night's escape. Beneath his thin mattress, he'd hidden his mother's handkerchief and the charcoal sketch of her, his only remaining possessions, after Mrs. Peterson had burned his other drawings as morbid fixations. "Coming, ma'am." He called his voice deliberately submissive, while his mind raced with plans for tonight. They were shipping him east tomorrow. Under the stage was already arranged passage paid by Walter Grayson's charitable foundation. Kevin had overheard Mrs. Peterson telling Dr. Moore it would be best for everyone if the disturbed child were sent to a proper institution back east. Best for everyone, except his mother, who was still alive somewhere. Kevin felt it with bone-deep certainty. Downstairs, he positioned himself near the study door, ostensibly polishing the banister, while straining to hear Mrs. Peterson's hushed conversation with Dr. Moore. "Found more blood on his sheets," she was saying. "Still digging at that grave with his bare hands. Unnatural, that's what it is." Moore's reply came slurred despite the early hour. Children hiccup, invent fantasies to shield themselves from trauma. Perfectly normal. There's nothing normal about that boy, Mrs. Peterson hissed. And Mr. Grayson's patience is wearing thin. The judge arrives tomorrow, and he wants no complications. The stage leaves at dawn, not in 3 days as originally planned. So soon. Moore sounded suddenly more alert. What's the rush? Don't ask questions you don't want answers to, Franklin, Mrs. Peterson snapped. Just prepare the sedative as instructed. We can't risk another escape attempt. Kevin's heart hammered against his ribs. Sedative. Dawn departure. His timeline had collapsed from days to hours. A shadow passed the window, drawing his attention. For just an instant, Kevin glimpsed a face, dark, scarred, watching. The same presence from the cemetery. Their eyes met in silent communication before the figure vanished, leaving only a small object on the windowsill. A polished turquoise stone carved with an unfamiliar symbol. Kevin pocketed it quickly, warmth spreading through his palm from the stone's smooth surface. Somehow he knew help had arrived. The day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Kevin scrubbed floors, peeled potatoes, and endured Mrs. Peterson's constant supervision with uncharacteristic docility. At dinner, he noticed her watching him closely as she served thin stew from a cast-iron pot. Eat up, she ordered, dropping an extra piece of bread beside his bowl. Long journey tomorrow. Need your strength. Kevin noticed the stew had an unusual bitter undertone beneath the salt. Remembering the whispered conversation, he only pretended to eat, secretly dropping spoonfuls into his napkin whenever Mrs. Peterson turned away. By bedtime, the other children had fallen into unnaturally deep slumber, while Kevin remained alert, watching shadows lengthen across the dormitory floor as night descended. When the house finally quieted, he retrieved his hidden treasures and approached the window. The latch yielded to practiced fingers, but the oak branch that had seemed within reach now appeared impossibly distant. As panic began to rise, a shadow detached from the tree trunk, the Apache warrior moving with supernatural silence along the branch until he reached the window. You came? Kevin whispered, relief flooding his voice. I am Taza. The warrior replied, his English precise but accented. The stone told you I would return. Without waiting for a response, Taza extended his arms. Kevin hesitated only briefly before launching himself across the gap. Strong hands caught him, pulling him safely onto the branch. With silent efficiency, Taza secured the boy to his back with a leather strap, then descended the massive oak with the fluid grace of a mountain lion. Once on solid ground, Kevin tumbled out his story in urgent whispers, how his mother had worked as a nurse at Rose Hill's elder care facility, how she'd begun documenting suspicious deaths among patients, how she disappeared the day after warning him that everything I do is to keep you safe. Most crucially, he explained about the misplaced scar on the buried body. A mother's scar was here. He demonstrated on his left wrist. But Esther, she helped prepare the body. She told Mrs. Peterson the dead woman's scar was on the right wrist. It wasn't my mother they buried. Taza's expression remained impassive, but his eyes sharpened with interest. This Esther, she is trustworthy. She was Mother's friend, Kevin affirmed. She's the only nurse who didn't quit when the strange death started. Where would your mother keep evidence of these deaths? Under a floorboard in our cabin. She hid her journal there and money too. The night before she disappeared, she was acting strange, checking the hiding place, telling me to be brave no matter what. Without another word, Taza altered course toward the small cabin at the edge of town. They moved through shadow and starlight, the warrior teaching Kevin to walk without sound, to watch for signs of pursuit. When a patrol of Grayson's men rode past Taza, pulled the boy into a drainage culvert, covering his mouth until the danger passed. They searched for someone, Taza observed, studying the rider's urgency. Not just you? Maybe they know you're helping me, Kevin suggested. Taza's expression darkened. Or they know your mother is not in that grave. The cabin appeared abandoned, its door hanging ajar. Moonlight streamed through broken windows, illuminating a scene of methodical destruction. Furniture splintered, mattress slashed open, every floorboard pried up and discarded. Too late, Taza murmured, examining the scene with professional assessment. They sought something specific. Kevin rushed to the bed, dropping to his knees. It was here, he said, pointing to a particular board already removed. Mother's journal would prove what Grayson was doing. What was he doing? Taza asked, his voice dangerously soft. Killing old settlers for their land. Kevin replied with surprising matter-of-factness. Mother said he'd poison them after they signed papers. But she couldn't understand why he wanted those specific properties. They weren't worth much. Taza stepped carefully through the destruction, his tracker's eyes noting details. Others would miss the directionality of the search, the focus on certain areas over others. At the fireplace, he paused, kneeling to examine the hearth. Someone searched here, he noted, pointing to disturbed ashes. But not thoroughly. His nimble fingers probed the chimney shaft, finding a loose stone where the mortar had crumbled. Behind it, a small cavity contained a folded paper blackened with soot, but intact. The document proved to be a hand-drawn map of Rose Hill with the elder care facility circled. Various properties throughout town were marked with different symbols, and across the bottom ran a hastily scrawled note. WG land seizure pattern, all former Apache treaty properties. Connect to reservation boundaries. Judge Thompson arrival, May 15th. Taza's breath caught as he studied the map. These properties, they form a pattern only visible when mapped together. They all sit atop underground water sources. Former Apache land taken through treaties now being consolidated by one man. What does that mean? Kevin asked, struggling to understand. It means, Taza replied grimly, that Walter Grayson plans to control all water access in the territory. Without water, the remaining Apache lands become worthless. My people would be forced to relocate or die of thirst. His finger traced a line across the map. And Judge Thompson's arrival tomorrow is no coincidence. He comes to approve new reservation boundaries. Their conversation froze at the sound of approaching horses. Through a gap in the shutters, they watched as two of Grayson's men dismounted before the cabin. Still nothing. The first man grumbled, spitting tobacco juice into the dust. Searched every inch, his companion replied. If the nurse hid anything else, it ain't here. The boss is getting nervous. Says that Apache trackers saw signs of another warrior near town. If the tribes get wind of the water scheme before the judge signs off, won't matter once the papers are filed. Anyway, let's check the cemetery again. Boss thinks the boy might return there. As the men remounted, Kevin tugged urgently at Taza's sleeve. We have to find Esther. She knows more than she told anyone. First, we need allies. Taza countered, guiding Kevin toward the rear window. My people must be warned about the water rights. But to reach them, we must cross open country. What about my mother? Kevin protested. Taza knelt to meet the boy's eyes directly. Listen to me, Kevin. If your mother discovered Grayson's plan, she is either being held until Thompson approves the boundaries, or she is truly dead. Either way, our best chance to help her is to stop Grayson's scheme. To do that, we need more information. Seeing the stubborn set of Kevin's jaw so much like his own son's, had been Taza softened his approach. We will find her. This I promise on my ancestors' spirits. But we must be smart, not just brave. Kevin studied the warrior's face, seeing not just determination, but something deeper, a personal stake in this fight. Slowly, he nodded his agreement. They slipped from the cabin into the desert night, following a circuitous route toward the elder care facility at the edge of town. As they approached the sprawling adobe structure, Taza pulled Kevin into the shadow of a massive saguaro cactus, pointing toward movement near the building's rear entrance. A woman in a nurse's uniform was hurrying toward a small outbuilding, glancing nervously over her shoulder as she went. Even in moonlight, Kevin recognized Esther's distinctive gait. "That's her," he whispered. "Mother's friend." Taza studied the woman's movements with practiced suspicion. "She acts like someone with secrets. Come, but stay behind me." They circled wide, approaching the outbuilding from the blind side. Through a small window, they could see Esther frantically searching through medical supplies on wooden shelves, muttering to herself as she worked. "Has to be here somewhere." Claire said, "Third shelf, false bottom." Kevin nearly called out to her, but Taza's hand clamped firmly over his mouth. The warrior's eyes narrowed as another figure appeared in the doorway. Walter Grayson himself, impeccably dressed, despite the late hour, his silver-streaked hair and neatly trimmed beard giving him the appearance of a distinguished statesman rather than a murderer. "The working late, Miss Curtis?" Grayson's smooth voice carried clearly through the thin walls. Esther jumped, nearly dropping the box in her hands. "Mr. Grayson, I was just inventorying supplies for tomorrow's deliveries." "How conscientious." Grayson stepped closer, his smile never reaching his cold eyes. "Especially considering tomorrow is your day off." Esther's hands trembled visibly. "I just wanted everything ready for my replacement." "Indeed." Grayson's gaze swept the shelves with calculated precision. "You wouldn't happen to be looking for Clare Dawson's journal, would you? The one detailing her concerns about our elder care practices?" "I don't know what you—" Grayson moved with surprising speed for a man his age, pinning Esther against the shelves, his hand at her throat. "Don't lie to me, Miss Curtis. Clare confided in you. That makes you either an asset or a liability to me. Choose carefully which you prefer to be." From their hiding place, Kevin surged forward instinctively, but Taza held him back with iron strength. Through the window, they watched Esther's defiance crumble under Grayson's threat. "I don't have her journal," she choked out. "I swear it. She never showed it to me. But she told you about my business arrangements." It wasn't a question. Only that she suspected foul play in the deaths. Nothing specific. Tears streamed down Esther's face. "Please, Mr. Grayson, I haven't told anyone." "Not even the boy? You were quite fond of him, as I recall." "Kevin, no, he's just a child." Grayson released her throat, stepping back with restored civility. "A child who keeps returning to his mother's grave, insisting she isn't dead. A child who will be safely on tomorrow's eastbound stage. A child who frankly knows too much for his own good." Esther's eyes widened. "You wouldn't harm a child." "My dear, I've built an empire by eliminating obstacles of all sizes." Grayson straightened his already immaculate jacket. "Now you have a choice to make. Continue working here with a substantial raise and my personal protection, or join Clare Dawson in obscurity." "Where is she?" Esther whispered, a final act of defiance. "What did you do with her?" Something like admiration flickered across Grayson's features. "She's where all troublemakers end up in this territory, silenced and forgotten." He moved toward the door, pausing to deliver a final warning. "Be at the stagecoach station tomorrow to see the boy off. Show proper community concern for the orphan. After that, we'll discuss your future here." His voice hardened. "And Esther, if you try to help the boy escape his destiny, you'll share Claire's fate, except I won't bother with the pretense of a funeral." After Grayson departed, Esther collapsed to her knees, sobbing quietly. Taza signaled for Kevin to remain hidden while he circled to the outbuilding's door. He entered with such silence that Esther didn't notice his presence until his shadow fell across her. Her scream died in her throat as Kevin darted past Taza to embrace her. "Esther, it's me." "Kevin." She clutched him desperately. "Child, you shouldn't be here. It's too dangerous." Her gaze lifted to Taza, fear returning. "Who?" He's helping me find Mother, Kevin explained quickly. This is Taza. He believes me about the scar. Esther's expression shifted from fear to wary hope. The scar, yes. It was on the wrong wrist. I noticed during preparation, but told myself I was mistaken. When you kept insisting at the funeral. Her voice broke. I should have spoken up then, but I was afraid. Tell us everything, Taza commanded softly. The woman in the grave, who was she? Esther glanced nervously toward the door. Not here. They have men patrolling the grounds now. She reached beneath the third shelf, triggering a hidden compartment. From it, she withdrew a small leather-bound book. Claire's journal. She showed me this hiding place the day before she disappeared. Opening it, she removed a folded paper. And this map of water sources underlying Rose Hill properties. The same pattern, Taza confirmed, comparing it to their discovered map. Your friend understood Grayson's plan. But why would she confront him directly? Esther wondered, packing the journal into her apron pocket. Claire was always so careful. Because of this, Kevin said, suddenly pulling something from his pocket, a tarnished brass key. Mother gave me this the night before she disappeared. Said it opened a strongbox with evidence that would stop the stealing of land and lives. Said to keep it secret until she told me otherwise. Taza and Esther exchanged surprised glances. What strongbox? Esther asked. Where? I don't know, Kevin admitted. But it has to be important because men searched our cabin the night after Mother disappeared. They tore up everything looking for something small. A spark of recognition lit Esther's eyes. Wait, Claire mentioned a deposit box at the Rose Hill Bank. Said she'd put documents there in case anything happened. Could that be it? The bank wouldn't give a child access, Taza noted. No. Esther agreed. But they might allow the boy's guardian to access it. A plan formed in her expression. Mrs. Peterson has temporary guardianship papers. If I could somehow get those papers. No. Taza interrupted firmly. Too dangerous. Grayson watches you now. He turned to Kevin. Is there anything else your mother said about this strongbox? Any clue to its location? Kevin closed his eyes, concentrating on that final night with his mother. She said it was hidden where water meets stone, where the ancestors watch over secrets old and new. I thought she was telling me a bedtime story. Taza's expression changed subtly. A flicker of understanding crossed his features. These words have meaning to my people. There is a sacred place where ancient ones carved symbols into rock beside a hidden spring. The Spanish called it Pedra Pintada, the painted rock. The Apache have used it for generations to hide objects from white eyes. Could Mother have known about it? Kevin asked dubiously. She treated many Apache at the elder care facility, Esther recalled. Some of the tribal elders were brought there when they became too frail to stay on the reservation. They trusted Clare, might have told her about their sacred places. A sound outside snapped their attention to the window. Lantern light bobbed across the compound as night watchmen made their rounds. Taza motioned for silence, guiding them toward the rear door. We must reach Pedra Pintada before dawn, he whispered. If your mother hid evidence there, it could save both her life and my people's future. Esther hesitated. I should stay. If I disappear now, Grayson will know something's wrong. I can be more useful here, find out where they're keeping Clare. Taza studied her with newfound respect. You risk much. Clare would do the same for me. Esther replied simply. She embraced Kevin fiercely. Find your mother, brave one. And when you do tell her, Esther kept her promise. As they prepared to slip away, Kevin gripped Esther's hand. "The woman in the grave," he insisted. "Who is she?" Esther's voice dropped to the barest whisper. "From what I overheard, her name was Sarah Blackwood. She worked for the territorial governor investigating land fraud. She disappeared 3 weeks ago while examining property records in Rose Hill." Taza's expression hardened. "Grayson silences all who threaten his plans." "Not all," Kevin countered with surprising conviction. "Not my mother, and not us." The journey to Pedra Pintada tested Kevin's endurance to its limit. Across 12 miles of moonlit desert, they traveled Taza, alternating between carrying the exhausted boy and teaching him to move with minimal tracks. Each time Kevin's strength flagged, the warrior would point out some natural wonder, a hunting owl's silent flight, the delicate night-blooming Sirius, the distant glow of fox eyes watching their passage. "And the desert is not empty," Taza explained, helping Kevin over a particularly treacherous rock formation. "It speaks to those who know how to listen." "Like my mother's voice," Kevin said thoughtfully. "Everyone thinks I'm crazy hearing her when she's supposedly dead. But I know what I hear." Taza nodded solemnly. "The Apache believe that spirits of the wronged cannot rest. They call to the living for justice." He touched the medicine pouch at his waist. "My wife and son speak to me still 3 years after their murder." "Who killed them?" Kevin asked softly. "White settlers wanting our water rights." Taza replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "Led by a man named Hollister, who worked for another who remained unseen. Grayson, perhaps. The pattern is the same: death for land, for water, for power." Taza stopped, suddenly raising one hand for silence as he tilted his head listening. After a moment, he pulled Kevin behind a large boulder, pressing a finger to his lips. In the pre-dawn stillness, hoofbeats approached multiple riders moving quickly across the desert floor. Peering around the boulder's edge, they watched as 5 mounted men passed within 50 yards, heading in the same direction they were traveling. "Grayson's men," Taza whispered once the riders had passed. "They seek the same place we do." "How would they know about Pedra Pintada?" Kevin asked. Taza's expression darkened. "Someone must have told them of its significance. Perhaps another Apache forced or bribed to reveal sacred knowledge." His jaw tightened. "Or perhaps they followed signs I failed to conceal. Can we still reach it first?" "Not by the direct path. But I know ways through these canyons that few remember." Taza changed direction, leading Kevin up a nearly invisible game trail that wound through knife-edged rocks. "We must be as silent as hunting cougars now. Those men will kill without hesitation if they discover us." They climbed steadily higher, the pre-dawn sky gradually lightening around them. Kevin struggled to keep pace, his city-bred legs unused to such terrain. When he slipped, sending a small cascade of pebbles down the slope, Taza froze, listening intently for any sign they'd been detected. Satisfied they remained unnoticed, the warrior hoisted Kevin onto his back, continuing the ascent with barely diminished speed. At the canyon's rim, they paused to rest briefly. From this vantage point, they could see Grayson's men dismounting at the canyon entrance, a half-mile distant, preparing to search on foot. "We have little time," Taza observed. "The sacred site lies in that protected alcove." He pointed to a shadowy recess in the opposite wall where ancient pictographs were just visible in the strengthening light. "But we must cross open ground to reach it." Kevin studied the terrain with growing dismay. "They'll see us for sure, not if we become spirits ourselves." Taza removed a small pouch from his belt, extracting a pinch of reddish powder which he mixed with saliva in his palm. With methodical precision, he applied the paste to Kevin's face in horizontal streaks, then to his own. "War paint," he explained, "but not for battle against men. This is to make us invisible to evil spirits." The transformation was startling. With the paint applied, Taza seemed to blend into the rocky landscape, his features breaking up against the variegated stone. After treating their exposed skin, he instructed Kevin to move only when shadows shifted to freeze in place at any sound. "Follow exactly in my footsteps," he directed. "Step only where I step. The Ancient Ones watch us now, judging our worthiness to receive their secrets." They descended into the canyon, using a series of nearly invisible handholds and footholds, worn into the rock by generations of Apache before them. Kevin moved with uncharacteristic grace, his fear of discovery overriding his exhaustion. When one of Grayson's men appeared at the canyon floor barely 30 yards away, both froze against the rock face, their painted bodies merging with the stone's natural patterns. The searcher passed directly beneath them, oblivious to their presence, continuing deeper into the canyon. When he'd gone, Taza and Kevin completed their descent and crossed quickly to the alcove containing the ancient pictographs. Here, faded red and ochre drawings depicted hunts, spirit creatures, and ceremonial scenes dating back centuries. Where would Mother hide something here? Kevin whispered, overwhelmed by the sacred atmosphere of the place. Taza studied the rock walls carefully. "Your mother's words, where water meets stone, where the ancestors watch. The water must be..." He moved deeper into the alcove, feeling along the rear wall, until he found it a tiny seep spring emerging from the rock face, barely more than a damp patch, with a few precious droplets forming. Beside it, nearly invisible unless one knew to look, was a pictograph of circular ripples. "They're here," Taza indicated. "This symbol represents secrets hidden in water." Together, they examined the area, finding nothing obvious, until Kevin noticed a small vertical crack beside the seep. Could something be wedged in there? Taza nodded approvingly. "Good eyes, young one." He produced a slender bone tool from his pouch, probing gently into the crack until he felt resistance. With careful manipulation, he extracted a small oilskin packet, roughly the size of a man's palm, waterproofed and sealed with wax. Kevin's brass key fit perfectly into the small lock securing the package. Inside lay 2 documents, a certified survey map showing underground water sources throughout the territory, with Rose Hill at the center of an extensive aquifer system, and an official-looking letter bearing the territorial governor's seal addressed to Agent Sarah Blackwood. As Taza unfolded the letter, his breath caught. This is proof of Grayson's crimes and more. He handed it to Kevin, who struggled to decipher the formal language. It says Sarah Blackwood was investigating corruption in land deals, that Judge Thompson was suspected of taking bribes, that the governor wanted evidence before confronting them. Kevin looked up confused. "But what does this have to do with Mother?" "Read the last paragraph," Taza directed grimly. Kevin's eyes widened as he read. "Agent Blackwood, upon completion of your investigation in Rose Hill, rendezvous with our informant, Nurse Clare Dawson, who has been documenting suspicious deaths at the elder care facility. Combined with your land fraud evidence, her testimony should provide sufficient cause for federal intervention. Mother was working with the governor all along." Kevin breathed. That's why she kept the journal. And why Grayson could not allow either woman to reach the territorial capital. Taza added. "He buried Sarah in your mother's place to hide 2 crimes at once." A voice from the canyon entrance shattered their revelation. "Found tracks leading in here, boss, recent ones. Search every inch," came the unmistakable command of Walter Grayson himself. "The boy and the Apache can't have gone far." Taza quickly rewrapped the evidence, securing it inside his shirt. "We must reach higher ground," he whispered, pointing to a narrow chimney crack leading upward from the alcove's rear. "It connects to passages that emerge behind the searchers." "I'm scared," Kevin admitted, eyeing the tight vertical passage. "Fear keeps us alive," Taza replied, hoisting the boy toward the opening. "Courage gets us through it. Your mother showed both, now it's your turn. The chimney proved barely wide enough for Taza's shoulders, its rough surfaces scraping skin as they ascended in total darkness. Kevin led the way, feeling blindly for handholds his small size and advantage in the confined space. Twice they froze as voices echoed from below, searchers entering the alcove they just vacated. "Nothing here but old Indian drawings," someone called. "Check again," Grayson's voice commanded. The Apache wouldn't bring the boy here without reason. After what seemed an eternity of vertical climbing, Kevin felt cool air on his face. "I think we're near the top," he whispered down to Taza. "Go carefully," came the strained reply. "There may be sentries above." Kevin emerged onto a small ledge overlooking the canyon, the rising sun now illuminating the desert landscape in golden light. The ledge connected to a narrow trail that wound away from the search party below. Freedom seemed tantalizingly close, until the hammer of a revolver cocked inches from Kevin's head. "Well, well," drawled Sheriff Mills, his badge gleaming in the morning light. "Seems like Grayson was right about you heading here." His free hand gripped Kevin's collar, yanking him fully onto the ledge. "Where's your Apache friend, boy?" Before Kevin could respond, a shower of small stones cascaded from above, drawing the sheriff's attention upward. In that split second of distraction, Taza exploded from the chimney opening, tackling Mills with such force that both men tumbled dangerously close to the ledge's edge. The revolver discharged harmlessly into the air as they grappled Mills's superior weight, countered by Taza's lightning reflexes. "Oh, run, Kevin!" Taza shouted, pinning the sheriff momentarily. "Follow the high trail east." Kevin hesitated only briefly before sprinting along the narrow path, the sounds of struggle fading behind him. He'd covered perhaps 50 yards when a gunshot echoed through the canyon, followed by silence. Stopping in his tracks, Kevin turned back, torn between escape and loyalty. The decision was made for him as Taza appeared on the trail, blood streaming from a gash across his ribs, but otherwise intact. "Sheriff will have a headache when he wakes," the warrior managed through gritted teeth. But others heard the shot. "We must move quickly." They fled along the high trail, Taza's wound, leaving a troubling blood trail despite his efforts to bind it with strips torn from his shirt. When they reached a fork in the path, he hesitated, clearly weakening. "You listen carefully," he told Kevin, voice strained. "Take the right fork. It leads to a place called Skeleton Canyon. Apache scouts sometimes camp there. Tell them Taza sends warning water rights betrayed. They will help you reach the reservation." "You're coming too," Kevin insisted, tears welling in his eyes. Taza shook his head. "I will lead the pursuers away down the left fork. With my blood marking the trail, they will follow me, not you. But you're hurt. A warrior's pain is nothing against a people's survival." Taza removed his medicine pouch, placing it around Kevin's neck. "This carried my family's spirits. Now it carries yours. When you find your mother, tell her what you learned at Pedra Pintada. And tell my people about Grayson's water scheme." Before Kevin could protest, further shouts from below indicated the search party had discovered the sheriff. Taza pushed the boy firmly toward the right fork. "Go now. Be as silent as the owl's flight." With a final anguished look, Kevin ran as instructed, fighting back tears as he heard Taza moving deliberately down the left path, making no effort to hide his passage. Behind him, voices raised in excitement as the pursuers discovered the blood trail. Kevin ran until his lungs burned the canyon walls, blurring through his tears. When he finally stopped to catch his breath, he found himself in a sheltered box canyon where water pooled in a small natural basin. Slaking his thirst, he noticed horse tracks in the soft earth, nearby recent ones, heading deeper into the canyon. Following cautiously, he rounded a bend to discover 3 mounted Apache scouts watering their horses. They spotted him immediately, hands dropping to weapons, until they noticed the distinctive medicine pouch around his neck. Taza. Kevin gasped, struggling to remember the exact words. Taza sends warning water rights betrayed. The scouts exchanged glances, then the eldest dismounted, approaching Kevin with grave concern. Where is Taza? Hurt, drawing the bad men away. Kevin pulled the evidence packet from inside his shirt where Taza had entrusted it to him. He said to show you these. They prove Walter Grayson is stealing Apache water rights. The older scout examined the documents with growing alarm, speaking rapidly to his companions in their native tongue. After a brief consultation, he lifted Kevin onto his horse. Nacht, I am Naicho, brother of Taza's wife. He explained, remounting behind the boy. We will find him, then take you both to safety. No, Kevin protested. We must find my mother first. She's being held prisoner at an old mining office near Rose Hill. Naicho's eyes narrowed. The white woman from the grave that wasn't hers? Kevin nodded eagerly. You know about that. Taza sent word 3 days ago. We have been watching Rose Hill from the shadows. Naicho signaled to one of his companions, who immediately rode off along a different trail. Kia will gather warriors. We will find both Taza and your mother. They backtracked toward the fork in the trail, moving with a silent efficiency that had made Apache scouts legendary even among their enemies. At the division point, they found signs of struggle blood smears, disturbed earth-spent cartridges, but no bodies. 4 men carried something heavy down this path. Naicho observed, reading the signs like script on a page. 2 horses burdened with extra weight. His fingers traced a partial boot print. Grayson's foreman. I know his step. Is Taza? Kevin couldn't finish the question. Alive? Naicho confirmed grimly. They would not burden horses with a dead man. Following the trail led them to a clearing where horses had been tethered recently. From there, hoof prints led directly back toward Rose Hill. They mean to make example of him. Naicho explained, urging his horse into a steady lope. Public hanging, most likely. Grayson must show strength before Judge Thompson arrives. Kevin clung to the saddle horn, dread and determination warring in his chest. We have to stop them. We will, Naicho promised. But we must be smart. Grayson controls the law in Rose Hill. We need more than weapons, we need witnesses to his crimes. As they approached the town from the eastern ridge, Rose Hill appeared deceptively peaceful in the late morning sun. Only the unusual concentration of horses outside the sheriff's office suggested something significant was happening. Naicho directed his mount into a hidden arroyo that skirted the town's perimeter. This leads near the old mining company offices, he explained. If your mother is held there, we must move quickly before Grayson consolidates his position. The Copper King Mining Company's abandoned headquarters sat isolated at the edge of town, a squat wooden structure with boarded windows and a sagging porch. 2 armed guards lounged outside, rifles across their laps, looking bored but alert. How do we get past them? Kevin whispered as they observed from concealed positions. Naicho produced a small clay pot from his saddlebag. Apache dust medicine. He explained, mixing its contents with water to form a paste which he applied to his face and hands. It will draw their eyes away from me, like Taza's war paint. Similar but more powerful. Stay here. He handed Kevin a bone whistle. If danger comes, blow once. We will find you. Before Kevin could protest, Naicho had vanished into the scrub, moving in a wide arc that positioned him behind the mining office. Minutes crawled by with excruciating slowness as Kevin watched the guards, who showed no awareness of the Apache's approach. Suddenly, a strange keening sound emerged from the hills behind the building, an unnatural wail that caused both guards to stiffen. One rose, peering anxiously toward the source. The hell was that? He called to his companion. Probably coyote, the second man replied, though he too had straightened, hand dropping to his holster. The sound came again closer, more distinct, raising gooseflesh on Kevin's arms, despite the morning heat. This time both guards stood raising their rifles nervously. "Oh, that ain't no coyote," the first guard muttered. "Sounds like—" He never finished the sentence as Naicho materialized behind him, striking with the precision of a rattlesnake. Both guards crumpled silently to the ground, unconscious but alive. Kevin rushed forward as Naicho motioned him over. "How did you do that sound?" "Old hunting trick." The Apache replied tersely, already working on the door's heavy padlock with tools from his pouch. "Mimics a mountain lion, but wrong enough to unsettle men who know better." The lock yielded with surprising ease. "Not meant to keep people out," Naicho observed. "Meant to keep someone in." The door swung inward to reveal a scene that seared itself into Kevin's memory forever. The office's interior was dimly lit by a single barred window, illuminating a figure chained to a support post in the center of the room. Clare Dawson's once vibrant face was gaunt with dehydration, her nurse's uniform torn and filthy, her wrists raw from struggling against iron manacles. But her eyes blazed with the same determination Kevin had inherited. "Mother," he cried, rushing forward. Claire's head jerked up at the sound disbelief warring with hope across her features. "Kevin, is it really you this time?" "It's me," he sobbed, reaching her side, small hands fumbling ineffectively with her chains. "I found you. I knew you weren't dead." "My brave, brilliant boy," Clare whispered, tears cutting clean tracks through the grime on her face. "How did you—" Questions later. Naicho interrupted, examining the chains with practiced efficiency. "These need keys." Or, he produced a slender metal tool from his belt, inserting it into the manacle locks with delicate precision. "You're Apache," Clare observed, watching him work with undiminished alertness despite her condition. "Are you with Taza?" Both Naicho and Kevin looked up sharply. "You know Taza?" Kevin asked. He visited the elder care facility several times, gathering information about Grayson's scheme from the tribal elders there. Clare winced as the first manacle released blood rushing painfully back into her hand. "He's the one who warned me about the water rights connection after I noticed the pattern of deaths." As Naicho worked on the second lock, Kevin quickly explained everything: the false burial, Sarah Blackwood's identity, the evidence from Pedra Pintada, and Taza's capture. With each revelation, Claire's expression shifted between horror and vindication. "I knew Grayson was poisoning patients for their land," she confirmed as the second manacle released. "But I didn't understand the full scope until I mapped the properties. When I confronted him with my suspicions, he laughed and offered me a partnership." Her voice hardened. "When I refused and threatened to go to the governor, he had his men drag me here. He's been trying to force me to sign a confession, admitting I poisoned the patients myself." "How long have you been here?" Naicho asked, supporting her as she struggled to stand on weakened legs. 3 days, I think. It's hard to track time." Claire's voice dropped. Grayson visited each day, escalating his persuasion techniques. Today he seemed especially agitated, said something about accelerating the timetable because complications had arisen. "Judge Thompson arrives today," Kevin reminded them. "And now they have Taza too." Naicho helped Clare toward the door. "We must move quickly. My brother Kia gathers warriors, but they may not arrive in time to save Taza if Grayson plans a public example." As they emerged into the sunlight, Claire squinted painfully, leaning heavily on Naicho for support. "The sheriff's office," she said with sudden urgency. "That's where they'd take him for a formal charging before any public spectacle." Kevin's eyes widened in alarm as he processed what his mother was saying. "They're going to hang him for helping me, for being Apache," Naicho corrected grimly. "For knowing too much, for defying Grayson's plans." They had taken barely 3 steps from the building when hoofbeats approached rapidly from town. Nacho pushed Clare and Kevin back inside, positioning himself behind the door with a knife drawn. Through a crack in the boards, they watched as Dr. Moore's buggy came into view, the physician driving with uncharacteristic urgency. Moore pulled his horse to an abrupt stop before the unconscious guards, cursing loudly as he leapt down to examine them. Finding both men alive, he turned toward the mining office, revolver drawn. "Nurse Dawson," he called, voice betraying his nervousness. "I know you're in there. Come out peacefully." Clare exchanged glances with Nacho, who nodded slightly, melting deeper into the shadows beside the door. Taking a deep breath, she pushed Kevin behind her and stepped into the doorway, raising her hands. "Dr. Moore," she acknowledged wearily. "Come to finish Grayson's dirty work." Moore's hand trembled visibly, the revolver wavering between pointing at Clare and dropping toward the ground. "Not exactly," he muttered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "Time's run out, Clare. Grayson's planning something terrible. More terrible than poisoning elderly patients, than burying Sarah Blackwood alive in my grave, than holding me prisoner for 3 days. Clare's voice dripped with contempt. "You don't understand," Moore insisted, his bloodshot eyes wild with panic. "He's going to hang that Apache warrior in the town square at noon. Public spectacle. Justice for the grave desecrator, he's calling it. But that's just the beginning." He lowered his voice, stepping closer. "After Thompson signs those boundary papers, Grayson plans to poison the reservation's main water source. Make it look like natural contamination. Force the remaining Apache onto the barren lands, or watch them die of thirst." Even Nacho, disciplined warrior that he was, couldn't suppress a sharp intake of breath from his hiding place. "Why are you telling me this?" Clare demanded. Moore's shoulders slumped. "Because I'm a coward and a drunk, but I never signed up for mass murder." He holstered his revolver with shaking hands. "I've looked the other way too long, falsified too many death certificates. There's no salvation for me, but maybe." He extended a ring of keys. "These will unlock the cells at the sheriff's office. Get your Apache friend out before noon." "Why should I trust you?" Clare asked, though she reached for the keys. "You shouldn't," Moore admitted bitterly. "But I'm trying to die with at least one decent act to my name." He turned back toward his buggy. "There's a canteen of water and some food under the seat. Take it. Head east toward the territorial capital. I'll tell Grayson you'd already escaped when I arrived." As Moore climbed back into his buggy, Kevin emerged from behind his mother. "Dr. Moore, what about Maria Grayson? Is she part of her husband's plan too?" Moore paused, considering the question with surprising sobriety. "Maria? She's a prisoner in her own home, boy. Has been since she married Walter. I don't think she knows the full extent of his plans, but she suspects enough to be dangerous to him." He gathered the reins. "If I were you, I'd avoid the Grayson mansion entirely." As Moore's buggy disappeared back toward town, Clare turned to Nacho. "Can we trust him?" His fear was genuine. The Apache replied. "But we cannot risk the direct approach to the sheriff's office." He considered for a moment. "There is another way. Underground. The drainage tunnels," Clare realized, nodding. "They run beneath the main street connecting to the jail's basement." "How do you know this?" Kevin asked in surprise. A ghost of a smile touched Clare's lips. "Nurses hear many secrets, especially from elderly patients who helped build this town. Old Mr. Jenkins was particularly proud of his tunnel work." Nacho retrieved the supplies Moore had left, helping Clare drink small sips of water. "You are too weak for this mission," he observed clinically. "The boy and I will go." "Absolutely not," Clare countered with maternal ferocity. "I'm not letting Kevin out of my sight again." "Then we all go?" Nacho conceded, but slowly with great caution. "If Grayson's men find us before we reach Taza, He left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. Using the unconscious guards' bandanas to bind their hands and feet and their own kerchiefs as gags, Naicho led Clare and Kevin toward the arroyo, where his horse waited patiently. The tunnel entrance is behind the old wheelwright's shop, Clare explained as Naicho helped her mount. It will be flooded in sections from the spring rains, but passable. They approached Rose Hill cautiously, using the arroyo for cover, until they reached the abandoned wheelwright's shop at the town's southern edge. Behind the crumbling structure, half hidden by years of debris and overgrowth, a rusted iron grate covered the entrance to the drainage system. It hasn't been opened in years, Clare observed as Naicho examined the corroded hinges. Not from this side, the Apache noted, pointing to barely perceptible scratch marks around the lock. Someone uses this regularly. Recently, with Kevin's help, they managed to shift the heavy grate enough for a person to slip through. The tunnel beyond was dark and forbidding, the air heavy with dampness and the musty scent of stagnant water. I'll go first, Naicho decided, fashioning a crude torch from materials in his saddlebag. Boy, next, then the woman. Stay close to the right wall. If we get separated, keep moving toward the town center. The tunnel proved even more challenging than anticipated. Sections were indeed flooded ankle deep, while others had partially collapsed, requiring them to crawl through narrow spaces. Clare struggled visibly, her ordeal at the mining office having depleted her strength. But she pushed forward with grim determination, refusing Kevin's concerned inquiries with terse assurances that she could continue. After what seemed an eternity of slow progress, Naicho raised his hand for silence. Ahead, a faint light indicated another entrance to the tunnel system. Voices echoed from above, multiple men engaged in heated discussion. Waste of time with a trial, came a voice Kevin recognized as Sheriff Mills. Apache trash was caught red-handed desecrating a grave. Hanging's the only proper response. Proceedings must appear legitimate, replied Walter Grayson's distinctive cultured tones. Judge Thompson arrives within the hour. We need his signature on those boundary documents before anything unfortunate happens to our prisoner. What about the boy and Dawson's body turning up missing from her grave? Details we'll address after the water rights are secured. Grayson dismissed casually. The child will be on this afternoon's eastbound stage. As for the nurse, accidents happen in mining country. Cave-ins, sudden floods. Nature can be so unpredictable. Footsteps receded, a door closed, and silence fell. Naicho extinguished their torch, motioning for them to continue forward in darkness. The tunnel ended at a rusty ladder leading up to a trap door. With painstaking care, Naicho ascended, testing each rung before putting his full weight on it. At the top, he listened intently before pushing the trap door up just enough to peer through. Storage room, he whispered down. Empty for now. One by one, they emerged into a cluttered basement room filled with confiscated property, old furniture, and dusty file boxes. Clare leaned heavily against a shelf, her breathing labored, but her eyes clear and focused. The cells are upstairs, she whispered. Usually one deputy on guard duty during the day. Naicho nodded, producing a small leather pouch from his belt. Sleep medicine, he explained, extracting a pinch of fine powder. Silent, effective. The guard will wake with nothing worse than a headache. The basement door opened onto a narrow hallway leading to the main office. Naicho moved ahead alone, disappearing around the corner. Minutes stretched painfully until he reappeared, gesturing for them to follow. The deputy lay slumped at his desk, breathing deeply, but otherwise unharmed. Beyond him, a heavy door led to the cell block. Using Moore's keys, they unlocked it to find Taza in the last cell, wrists and ankles shackled to the wall. His face bore fresh bruises, and dried blood stained his shirt where the bullet had grazed his ribs, but his eyes remained defiant. You should be halfway to the reservation by now, he admonished when he saw Kevin. I couldn't leave you, the boy replied simply. Claire hurried forward as Naicho unlocked the cell. Taza. We meet at last without Grayson's patience as intermediaries. Recognition flickered in the warrior's eyes. Nurse Dawson, you look somewhat diminished since our correspondence. A ghost of a smile touched Claire's lips. 3 days as Grayson's guest will do that. She examined his injuries with professional efficiency as Naicho worked on the shackles. You'll live, but that rib needs proper binding. Later, Taza insisted as the final restraint fell away. We must reach the Apache camp before... The outer office door slammed open, voices approaching rapidly. Naicho pressed a knife into Taza's hand just as Sheriff Mills appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from surprise to rage at the scene before him. What the hell? His hand dropped to his holster, but Taza moved with astonishing speed despite his injuries, pinning Mills against the wall with a knife at his throat before the sheriff could clear leather. Not a word, Taza warned softly, or your blood joins mine on this floor. Behind Mills came Walter Grayson and 2 deputies, all freezing at the tableau before them. Grayson recovered first his aristocratic features, settling into a mask of calculated calm. Well, a jailbreak. How predictable. His cold eyes assessed the situation, lingering on Claire's disheveled appearance. I see you've escaped your accommodations as well, Nurse Dawson. And young Kevin still convinced his mother isn't dead, though the evidence suggests otherwise. He gestured dismissively toward Claire. Clearly delirious from her ordeal. Probably doesn't even know who she is anymore. I know exactly who I am, Claire replied steadily. And what you are, Walter Grayson. A murderer, a poisoner of the elderly, a thief of Apache water rights. Serious accusations, Grayson remarked, seemingly unconcerned. But who would believe them? A hysterical nurse, a confused child, 2 Apache savages caught desecrating graves and assaulting lawmen. He smiled thinly. I control Rose Hill, Clare. Every business, every acre, every drop of water. Judge Thompson signs those boundary documents today, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Unless we reach the territorial capital with these, Kevin declared, boldly producing the oilskin packet with Sarah Blackwood's letter and the survey maps. For the first time, genuine alarm flashed across Grayson's face. Where did you get those? From Pedra Pintada. Taza answered, satisfaction evident in his voice. Where your men failed to find them this morning. Grayson's composure cracked momentarily before he regained control. It doesn't matter. You'll never make it out of Rose Hill alive. My men surround this building. He reached slowly into his jacket, producing a small silver whistle. 1 blast, and they storm this office. Yes, you might kill me, might even escape in the confusion, but you'd be hunted across the territory. Unless we have leverage. Claire countered, reaching into her torn uniform pocket to extract a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. Do you recognize this, Walter? It's the same poison you've been using on the elder care patients. Extracted from the contaminated water pitcher in Mrs. Winter's room. Her eyes hardened. 1 drop killed Mr. Rodriguez in 12 hours. Imagine what the entire vial would do. You're bluffing. Grayson scoffed, though his eyes remained fixed on the vial. You're a nurse. You heal, not harm. 3 days chained in darkness changes one's perspective. Claire replied, her voice chillingly calm. Here's what happens now. You order your men to stand down. You sign a full confession detailing your land scheme and Sarah Blackwood's murder. Then we all walk out of here together, you as our guarantee of safe passage to the territorial capital. Grayson's laugh held no humor. You expect me to sign my own death warrant? I think not. He raised the whistle to his lips. The gunshot exploded in the confined space, the bullet knocking the whistle from Grayson's hand, along with 2 of his fingers. He howled in pain and shock, clutching his bloodied hand as everyone turned toward the shooter. Maria Grayson stood in the doorway, her father's hunting rifle still smoking. "That's enough, Walter," she said quietly. "No more deaths." "Maria." Grayson gasped, staring at his wife with disbelief. "You treacherous bitch, after everything I gave you. You gave me a prison." She interrupted, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "You gave me nightmares, filled with the faces of those you murdered. You gave me the knowledge that I was too cowardly to stop you." She turned to Clare. "I'm sorry it took me so long to find my courage. Better late than never." Clare acknowledged, stepping forward to tie a makeshift bandage around Grayson's injured hand. Sheriff Mills, still at knife point, found his voice. "Maria, think what you're doing. You're throwing everything away." "No," she replied with surprising serenity. "I'm finally claiming something worth having. Self-respect." She addressed the deputies. "Put your guns on the floor and back away." Now, to everyone's surprise, they complied immediately. Maria nodded in satisfaction. "These men don't work for Walter. They work for the territorial marshal. Have for months." "What?" Grayson sputtered, looking betrayed. "I contacted the governor after Sarah disappeared," Maria explained. "Been feeding information to his office since then. These men were placed here to gather evidence, but they couldn't act without proof of your larger scheme." One of the deputies stepped forward, producing a badge from inside his shirt. "Deputy Federal Marshal James Conway at your service. We've been building a case against your husband for months, ma'am, but couldn't move without concrete evidence tying him to the land fraud and Sarah Blackwood's disappearance, which we now have," Clare said, indicating the documents Kevin held. "Along with a witness who can testify about the body in Claire Dawson's grave." Taza added, finally releasing Sheriff Mills, who slumped against the wall in defeat. Marshal Conway nodded grimly. "That should be sufficient to—" The office windows exploded inward as gunfire erupted from the street outside. Everyone dove for cover as bullets splintered wood and shattered glass around them. "Grayson's foreman," Nitro shouted over the cacophony. "He doesn't know about the federal marshals." Conway cursed, returning fire through the broken window. "We need to get to my men outside. They're positioned around town, but don't know we've been compromised." In the chaos, Walter Grayson saw his opportunity. Despite his injured hand, he lunged for his fallen whistle, managing to raise it to his lips and produce a piercing blast before Maria knocked it away. Too late," he sneered through pain-gritted teeth. "My men have their signal. You'll never leave Rose Hill alive." The gunfire intensified now, coming from multiple directions as Grayson's loyal men converged on the sheriff's office. Conway and his partner maintained suppressing fire, while Nitro and Taza assessed their options. Back tunnel. Taza decided, grabbing Kevin and pushing him toward the basement door. "We can reach the livery stable, get horses." "And go where?" Clare demanded, helping Maria drag the wounded Grayson toward cover. "They'll have every exit from town watched." "The church," Maria suggested suddenly. "Father Ignacio allows no weapons inside. Sacred ground. Even Walter's men respect that boundary." Conway nodded approval. "Good thinking. I can get a message to my other men from there. Hold position until reinforcements arrive." Their retreat to the basement was covered by Conway's expert marksmanship, but bullets followed them down the stairs, splintering wood around their heads. In the tunnel, progress was hampered by darkness, and Grayson's deliberate resistance, the land baron dragging his feet and stumbling repeatedly until Taza hoisted him unceremoniously over one shoulder. "Enjoying the indignity, Grayson," Clare remarked coldly as they sloshed through ankle-deep water. "Savor your temporary victory." Grayson spat back. "My men are loyal. They'll burn down the church if necessary to reach me." "Even your men have limits, Walter," Maria countered. Unlike you. They emerged from the tunnel system behind the livery stable, the sounds of gunfire now distant, but spreading through town as Conway's federal marshals engaged with Grayson's private army. The stable boy fled at their approach, allowing them to saddle horses without interference. The church is 3 blocks north, Maria directed as they mounted. If we stay behind buildings, we might reach it unseen. Their progress through Rose Hill's back alleys was tense, but unobstructed, until they reached the final approach to St. Michael's Church. There, an open square offered no cover for the last 100 yards. As they paused in the shelter of a hardware store assessing their options, Kevin tugged at Taza's sleeve. "Look," the boy whispered, pointing to movement on the church steps. Through the dust and haze of gun smoke, they could see figures gathering at the sanctuary entrance, several women from town, elderly patients from the care facility being evacuated, and Father Ignacio himself directing refugees inside. "They're using the church as shelter from the fighting," Clare realized. "Our perfect cover for us," Conway agreed. "We'll blend with the crowd." One by one, they merged with townspeople rushing toward the church's safety, keeping Grayson between them with a blanket draped over his bound hands. They had nearly reached the steps when a shout went up from behind. "There, that's Grayson with them." Gunfire erupted bullets, kicking up dirt around their feet as they raced the final yards to the church entrance. Father Ignacio stood his ground in the doorway, arms outstretched as if his black cassock could somehow deflect bullets. "Stop!" the priest commanded with surprising authority. "This is God's house. No violence will cross this threshold." Whether from respect or superstition, the gunfire ceased as they stumbled through the massive oak doors, which closed heavily behind them. Inside the church was already crowded with townspeople seeking refuge from the chaos outside. Whispers and gasps rippled through the congregation as they recognized the bloodied, disheveled group, particularly Clare Dawson, widely believed to be dead. "My friends." Father Ignacio addressed his flock calmly. "We have wounded who need attention. Dr. Moore, if you would assist." To Kevin's surprise, Dr. Moore emerged from a side chapel medical bag in hand, his movements steadier than the boy had ever seen them. The doctor's eyes widened at the sight of Clare alive, Walter Grayson captured, and the Apache warriors standing proudly despite their injuries. "Well," Moore remarked dryly, "seems I backed the right horse for once." As he treated Grayson's hand and Taza's wounds, Marshal Conway established a defensive perimeter inside the church with volunteers from among the refugees. Outside, sporadic gunfire continued as his men gradually gained control of the town. Kevin stayed close to his mother, unwilling to let her out of his sight after coming so close to losing her forever. As Clare rested on a pew, regaining her strength, the boy noticed an elderly Apache woman watching them intently from across the nave. "Mother," he whispered, "that woman is staring at us." Clare looked up, recognition dawning in her eyes. "Mrs. Begay," she called softly. "It's good to see you safe." The ancient woman approached slowly, her weathered face, a map of the territory's harsh history. She spoke briefly in Apache to Taza, who translated. "She says she knew you would not stay in the ground, that your spirit was too strong to be buried by lies." His voice softened. "She says she prayed to the ancestral spirits to guide your son to the truth." Mrs. Begay reached out with gnarled fingers to touch Kevin's face, speaking again in her native tongue. "She says you have the sight of the ancestors," Taza translated. "The ability to hear truths others cannot. A rare gift among her people, even rarer among whites." Kevin thought about the voices he'd heard from his mother's empty grave, the certainty that had driven him to dig night after night, despite everyone's disbelief. "Is that why I could hear Mother calling? Why I knew she wasn't dead?" Before Taza could answer, the church doors burst open. Judge Thompson entered, flanked by federal marshals and looking thoroughly bewildered by the scene before him. His confusion only deepened at the sight of Walter Grayson, bound and bleeding, Clare Dawson very much alive, and 2 Apache warriors standing freely among the townspeople. "What in God's name is happening here?" the judge demanded. "I was told there was an Apache uprising." "No uprising, Your Honor," Conway explained, stepping forward to present his federal credentials. "Just the exposure of a criminal conspiracy involving land fraud, murder, and attempted genocide through water rights manipulation." Thompson's florid face paled visibly. That's preposterous. I'm here for routine boundary approvals, nothing more. Boundaries that would have given Walter Grayson control of every water source serving the Apache reservation." Conway continued relentlessly. "Boundaries you were prepared to approve in exchange for a substantial kickback according to evidence we've gathered." "I never," Thompson began, but Walter Grayson's bitter laugh cut him off. "Save your denials, Edwin," the land baron sneered. "They have Sarah Blackwood's letter. They know about our arrangement." As Thompson spluttered indignantly, Maria stepped forward. "Your Honor, I've been documenting my husband's activities for months, including your meetings regarding the boundary changes. I suggest you cooperate fully with the federal investigation if you hope for leniency." Thompson collapsed onto a pew, the fight draining from him as he realized the depth of his predicament. Outside, the gunfire had ceased, entirely replaced by the sounds of Grayson's men surrendering to the federal marshals. In the sudden quiet, Father Ignacio addressed the stunned congregation. "Today, we have witnessed the power of truth to overcome deception, of courage to defeat tyranny. Let us pray for healing for our town, for the victims of injustice, and yes, even for those who perpetrated these crimes." As the priest led the townspeople in prayer, Kevin sat between his mother and Taza, the warrior's medicine pouch still hanging around his neck. He fingered it thoughtfully before removing it and offering it back to its rightful owner. "This helped me find Mother," he said solemnly. "Thank you for lending me your family's spirits." Taza studied the boy for a long moment before gently closing Kevin's fingers back around the pouch. "The spirits chose you," he replied quietly. "They recognized in you what I recognized, the heart of a true warrior who fights for justice, not vengeance. Keep it as a reminder that truth cannot remain buried forever." Clare watched this exchange with tears shimmering in her eyes, her hand finding her son's. "Kevin never stopped believing," she said, voice thick with emotion. "Even when everyone else accepted the lie, he kept digging literally and figuratively until he found the truth." Taza nodded solemnly. "Among my people, we say that a child's faith can move mountains. Today it moved something even more immovable, the corruption that men like Grayson build around themselves." He looked toward the altar where Walter and Judge Thompson sat under guard. No fortress is stronger than a simple truth spoken by one who truly believes. 1 month later, Clare Dawson stood on the porch of a small house nestled between town and reservation lands. The dwelling sat beside a clear spring, one of many water sources now legally protected by newly established federal oversight of territorial water rights. Behind her, Kevin played with Apache children, their laughter a healing counterpoint to Rose Hill's recent darkness. The territorial governor's investigation had revealed the full extent of Walter Grayson's crimes: 23 elder care patients poisoned for their land, Sarah Blackwood buried alive to silence her investigation, and a systematic attempt to monopolize water rights throughout the territory. Grayson, Judge Thompson, and Sheriff Mills now awaited trial in the territorial capital, their corruption exposed by Clare's testimony and Maria's extensive documentation. Rose Hill itself was recovering slowly. With Grayson's empire dismantled, land had been returned to rightful heirs, the elder care facility reformed under Esther's compassionate supervision, and a fragile peace established between settlers and the Apache communities. Maria Grayson had transformed her husband's mansion into a school that welcomed children of all backgrounds, her quiet strength earning respect from people who had once dismissed her as merely Grayson's timid wife. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew Clare's attention. Taza appeared on the ridge, silhouetted against the setting sun. Since the confrontation at the church, he had divided his time between tribal duties and helping establish the new water rights agreements. His visits to Clare and Kevin had grown more frequent, evolving from formal consultations to something deeper, a friendship forged in shared danger and mutual respect. "The water treaty is signed," Taza announced as he dismounted. "The governor has guaranteed Apache access to all traditional springs for the next 100 years. Claire smiled, relief evident in her features. "That's wonderful news. Will you stay for supper? Kevin has been practicing that tracking technique you showed him last time." Taza's normally stoic expression softened. "I would be honored." He produced a small wooden carving from his saddlebag, an eagle in flight, its wings outstretched toward freedom. "For your home," he explained, placing it on the porch railing. "To remember that truth, like the eagle, will always rise above deception." Kevin, spotting Taza, abandoned his play and raced to the porch. Around his neck still hung the medicine pouch, now accompanied by a small brass key, the one that had unlocked Sarah Blackwood's evidence package. He carried something in his hands, a sheet of paper covered in charcoal drawings. "I made this for you," he announced proudly, presenting the artwork to Taza. The drawing depicted 3 figures standing before a grave: a small boy, a tall Apache warrior, and a woman with a crescent-shaped scar on her left wrist. Behind them, spectral hands seemed to reach upward from the disturbed earth, not threatening, but grateful, as if thanking those who had uncovered the truth. Taza studied the image with rare emotion visible in his dark eyes. "You have captured more than just our likenesses," he said softly. "You have captured the spirit's purpose." "Mrs. Begay has been teaching me about Apache spirit beliefs," Kevin explained. "She says Sarah Blackwood's spirit guided us because she needed justice before she could rest." Claire joined them, resting her hand lightly on her son's shoulder. "Do you think that's true?" she asked Taza. Was Sarah's spirit involved in all this? The warrior considered the question with appropriate gravity. "My people believe that those who die unjustly remain connected to this world until truth is revealed. Perhaps Sarah's spirit did cry out from that grave, not to everyone, but to those with ears to hear." He looked meaningfully at Kevin. "To those with the gift." As twilight deepened over the desert, they moved inside where Claire had prepared a simple meal. The conversation flowed easily between them. Claire describing her plans to establish a clinic serving both town and reservation. Kevin excitedly detailing his schooling under Maria Grayson's tutelage, and Taza sharing cautious optimism about the future of Apache settler relations under the new agreements. "Dr. Moore has stopped drinking," Claire mentioned as they finished their meal. "He's working at the reformed elder care facility now, under Esther's supervision." "A man seeking redemption," Taza observed. "It is never too late to find a better path." "What about Maria?" Kevin asked. "She saved us all at the sheriff's office. She visits the reservation weekly now, learning our language to teach it in her school," Taza replied. "The elders call her Woman Who Found Her Voice." A rare smile touched his lips. A fitting name. After dinner, they sat on the porch watching stars emerge in the vast Arizona sky. Kevin, exhausted from his day's adventures, dozed against his mother's shoulder, while Claire and Taza spoke quietly of more serious matters. "There will always be men like Grayson," Claire said softly. "Men who value power over lives." "Yes," Taza acknowledged. "But there will also always be those who stand against them. Those who dig for truth when others accept convenient lies." He glanced at the sleeping boy. "Those who hear voices others cannot." Claire followed his gaze, brushing a strand of hair from her son's forehead. "I never believed in such things before. Spirits, visions. But after everything we've experienced, some gifts transcend what we think we know," Taza replied simply. Your son bridges worlds like you like me. Perhaps that is why our paths crossed when they did." As if sensing their discussion, Kevin stirred slightly, his hand tightening around the medicine pouch at his neck. "Are the ancestors watching us?" he murmured sleepily. "Always," Taza assured him. "They rejoice when justice is done, when wrongs are made right." "And Sarah?" Kevin asked, his voice fading as sleep reclaimed him. "Is she at peace now?" Clare met Taza's eyes over her son's head, the question hanging between them, a reminder of the horrors they'd uncovered and the healing still to come. Yes, Taza answered with quiet certainty. "Her scream has been answered. Her truth is known. She walks now in peace with the ancestors." Kevin nodded, satisfied, then drifted back to sleep. Clare continued rocking gently, the peaceful tableau a stark contrast to the terror and desperation of just weeks before. "Will you stay?" she asked Taza, the question weighted with meaning beyond the immediate moment. The warrior gazed out at the landscape where desert met settlement, where two worlds tentatively reached toward understanding. "Not all night," he answered carefully. "But I will return. Some bonds cannot be broken by distance or time." Clare smiled, understanding the complexity of his position. A warrior with responsibilities to his people. A man with a painful past, a bridge builder in uncertain times. "We'll be here," she promised. "Whenever you choose to visit." Later, after carrying Kevin to bed, Clare returned to find Taza preparing to leave. He mounted his horse with characteristic grace, but hesitated before departing. "The Apache have a saying," he told her, his voice carrying clearly in the still night air. "What is whispered in the ground will eventually be shouted from the mountains." Your son heard those whispers when no one else would listen. That kind of courage changes more than just one story, it changes the future itself. With that, he turned his horse toward the reservation, his silhouette gradually merging with the darkness. Clare watched until he disappeared completely, then returned inside to the home she'd created from the ashes of deception and loss. On the mantelpiece, Taza's eagle carving seemed almost alive. In the firelight, its wings poised for eternal flight. Beside it rested Kevin's drawing of their unlikely alliance. And next to that, Clare had placed the crumpled wooden cross that had once marked her falsely claimed grave, a reminder of death, defeated truth, triumphant, and voices heard despite impossible odds. Outside, the Arizona wind carried whispers across the landscape, not of suffering or secrets this time, but of legends being born. The story of a boy who refused to believe his mother was dead, of an Apache warrior who chose justice over vengeance, of a nurse who survived burial. These tales would be told around fires for generations, growing with each telling until they achieved the immortality of all great truths. That courage knows no cultural boundaries, that love transcends even the barrier between life and death. And that sometimes the most important voices are those that speak from the grave, waiting for someone with a faith to hear them. In the small house between two worlds, Clare Dawson checked on her sleeping son one last time before retiring. Kevin's face in repose showed none of the trauma he'd endured, only the peace of someone who had fought for truth and won. Around his neck, Taza's medicine pouch rose and fell, with each breath its contents ashes, memories spirits, standing eternal guard over the boy who had proven worthy of their protection. "Sleep well, my brave one," Clare whispered, kissing his forehead. "Your mother hears you always." And in the vast Arizona night beneath stars that had witnessed countless human dramas unfold across the unforgiving landscape, a chapter closed, not ending a story, but transforming it into legend. A legend that would echo through Rose Hill for generations, reminding all who heard it that some bonds cannot be severed by death, some truths cannot remain buried, and some voices will always find their way from the darkness of the grave into the light of justice.